Welcome to Growing Outstanding Transplants. I'm Gary Heilig, your host. And today we're talking about transplanting. That's from this container to a flat. Now you remember in the last video I talked about you have the option of sowing directly in a flat, which would avoid that transplant process. But sometimes you want to just get the seed started, which I did with these tomatoes, and there are quite a few in here, and they are spaced. I don't know if you can't see it really, but they're spaced about an inch apart in here. Now normally I would have transplanted these sooner, but I wasn't ready to do the video yet. But they're still within a range that I can transplant pretty easily. And I'm going to put them in my potting soil here, and I need a fork, of course, to take them apart. You use a plastic fork. Your wife will appreciate it if you're not using the utensils out of the kitchen. I've done that, but you know, there can be some blowback when you do that kind of thing. So anyway, the time to transplant is when the seedlings are large enough to move. For instance, these hollyhocks here, these first leaves, these smooth leaves here, are called the cotyledons or seed leaves. When those are large enough, you can transplant. You just have to be able to handle them without hurting them. And when I'm going to move my plants, the first thing I do is moisten the soil so that they can absorb plenty of water. And then what I do is I take my fork and dig around the outside so that I can easily tease them apart. And I try not to handle small seedlings by the stem. I would rather hold them by the true leaves or the seed leaves. And the reason for that is if I damage a leaf, I'm okay. But if I squeeze too hard on a stem, I pretty much wiped out that transplant. So all of these are ready. I have the gaillardia, I have some ornamental grass seed that I collected from somewhere. And I don't remember. But anyway, all of these are ready to transplant. But since these are the largest ones, I want to get these out first. Now what I like to do is make sure that I have my label ready. Well, I have a label right here, so if I can transplant all of these, I will just use this label. And so what I like to do is I will punch a bunch of holes in the soil, large enough for me to put the transplant in. And then I'll take this fork and I'll go between the transplants and kind of pull them up. And the longer you wait, the more roots are going to intertangle, and you're going to damage some roots in the process. But when they're quite young, you won't. I know I will get some here. Now these roots are nice and white, and there are quite a few of them. This is a happy transplant. Now, what I generally like to do with tomatoes, you can actually put them in deeper than what they were in the first container. They will develop roots all along the stem, but most other seedlings you put them at about the same depth as they were before. So you can just use your finger if you need to make a big hole. I push them down in there and then put the soil around them. And these guys are kind of big, so it's a little harder to do than some of the others. So once they're in here, I will fertilize them with a liquid fertilizer. You can use a compost tea. You can use an organic fertilizer. You can use liquid fertilizers, commercial ones. But what you would like to use is something with nitrogen in it, low in phosphorus. And a lot of times you will see on the shelves fertilizers called transplant fertilizers, and it'll say with B1 in it. B1 is thiamine, it's a vitamin. And research has been done at a number of universities that show that this stuff is absolutely useless. So if you're paying extra money for that fertilizer, you're not getting any real benefit from it. You would get more benefit from having nitrogen in that fertilizer than you will the B1. So if you want to make a compost tea, that'll work just fine. And so use what you'd like to use. Fish emulsion's a good one because it's 5% nitrogen, fairly low in phosphorus, only 1%, and it does have a little potassium there also. So that would be a good transplant fertilizer. Now I will transplant everything first, then I will give it a good drink of fertilizer, and I'm not going to do that here because it would drain all over the table, and my wife would not be happy. She's not home right now, but you know, you always leave some evidence, so you can be busted pretty easily. she's a gardener too. She's pretty tolerant of the types of things I do. For instance, transplanting at the dining room table. So anyway, let's get this job done. And once these are done, I can move them out to my greenhouse, or I can put them back under my T5 fluorescents in the basement. I haven't decided which one I will do yet. I'm currently doing some work in the greenhouse, and I'm reluctant to take a lot of stuff out there. I'm putting on the second layer of the polycarbonate covering on the inside. So I'm constantly having to move things around the greenhouse. So let's finish this right quick. It shouldn't take me more than about 5 to 10 minutes tops. One thing you want to do when you're doing this transplanting is don't leave the roots exposed to the air any longer than you have to, because on these roots are very fine root hairs, and that's where most of the water and nutrients are absorbed. And when you expose the roots to the air for any length of time, those very fine hairs will die, and then they have to regenerate roots. And that's one of the reasons we have what's called transplant shock. So I prefer to dig them out at one and plant them in the other right away. And this is the fun part of gardening. I've gone from the seed catalog to the seed packet to the developing seedling, and now I'm transplanting. You know what's next? The next thing is the good weather and going outside to the garden. And I just cannot wait. I'm looking at 2017 as being my very best gardening year. Of course, I thought that in 2016. So I'm just an optimist when it comes to growing plants. I'm starting my whole new community here, and I'm a happy camper. So we will see you in the next video where we'll talk about fertilizing and watering. This is Gary Heilig signing off.